Julie says, yes, do you have a bar solver, high, low, open, close? I see SiChameleon only has high and low, but not open and close. Okay, so Julie, I'm not sure what you mean by, do you have a bar solver? A bar solver, what exactly are you wanting to solve, Julie? But as far as, accessing the other bar prices, let's see, price breaking open. Okay, so Julie wants to know about price breaking the open. Okay, actually, so Julie, and for everybody here, actually, I do have Chameleon on this chart. You see the, right, I have my chart here set to a line. If you look up here, I have it set to a line chart, right? So the orange line is the line chart. And sorry about that, I forgot to mute my phone. So, and you can see the white dots on the orange line. Well, those white dots are coming from Chameleon. So I turned the closing price plot on for Chameleon. And let me bring that up. So that way you can actually see where the closing price is on this line chart. Because when you get, when you get a line that looks pretty consistent slope up, it's kind of hard to tell where the actual closing price is on these. So that's why I put the white dots on there. Helps to visualize that a little better. So Julie, so this is SiChameleon. And you can see we have all of these prices here available. So this is every price that NinjaTrader has available through it. And so you could grab the opening price. So within BloodHound, so when you select Chameleon as your indicator in one of the solvers, you could select the open as the plot that you want to use. So there's all of your prices available to you. So let me give you a little example. So if you're using a comparison, so like if you wanted to build your own bar direction solver, right, you would use the comparison solver, and then in the indicator A and then the indicator B, you would put the different prices that you're wanting to compare in indicator A or indicator B. All right, so if you want to, let me turn off the support resistance. So now all we have is the comparison solver turned on. So I could kind of build my own bar direction by using Chameleon. So I'll put Chameleon down there, and I'll just select the closing. All right, so I'm using the closing price for both long and short. And then in the indicator B selection, I will go and select the open price. All right, so there's the open price. And so now you can see that BloodHound's output is basically the same as what the bar direction would be. So when price is moving up, right, we're getting a long output. When price starts moving down, we're getting a short output. So, all right. So Julie, I hope that answers your question. And of course, you're saying on the 60-minute bar. So of course, you could just click on the chart button and add your 60-minute chart on here. I guess I might as well go ahead and do it. So add a 60-minute chart on there. And then I just need to take this solver. Should probably rename this. Something like that. I'll take this solver and I need to move it down, so I'm going to use the down button to move it down onto the 60-minute chart. And since I added a chart, when I close this up, let's see, first, before I close this, I need to rename my my BloodHound file. So I don't want to save over last week's BloodHound file. So I'm going to hit the change button, and let me go find. I'm going to go find that old name, last week's name, and I'll just put today's date on there. All right, there we go. So now, since I added the 60-minute chart, I need to close up BloodHound, and you can see now BloodHound's asking that that you press F5 because we have to tell NinjaTrader to load up or to create those 60-minute bars so that BloodHound has 60-minute bar data available to it. So I'll hit F5, and there you go. It looks quite a bit different now on the 60-minute chart. All right. Now I have my scaling fixed here because I kind of prepared a demonstration here for the support resistance solver. So there we go. And let me get rid of that. Let's see. Right, so Tony's asking. Tony. Oh, so I guess Tony's expanding upon his previous comment, saying so that we can find relevant class sequence or certain key topics. Yeah, by an easier search on the website. Yeah, I know. So Tony's making a comment that it's kind of hard to search through our website because we don't have a search tool on it yet. So yeah, that's one of the things that we do still need to implement is a good search tool for our website so you guys can find workshop videos easier. So one thing that might work better is if you go to our YouTube channel and do searches on YouTube for workshop videos. So let's see. Oh, that's the wrong one. There we go. So if I go to Learn BloodHound and go down to, let's see, no, it's Training Workshops. There we go. And I can just open up, so this is kind of a YouTube trick. So if you go to any of our web pages that has a video on it, all right, bring the video up, and you'll see every YouTube video, right, it uses the YouTube player, and you see it has this YouTube icon. So if you click on that YouTube icon, it actually opens up the YouTube page. So you can see I'm now actually on YouTube right now. And so from YouTube, if you're trying to search for I don't know, a particular condition that you're trying to work with, you can just type in BloodHound, and unfortunately there's a gang out there that has a pretty big presence on YouTube. So let's see, BloodHound. Let's see, how about if I search for divergence? Let's see if that brings up that divergence video. Yeah, so look at there, BloodHound, multi-time frames, and intro to divergence system. And then right down here is the divergence video. So that's a good way to, yeah, so Jeff, there you go. That kind of answered your question at the same time. So there's that divergence video. And you can see, let's see, it was done 6 months ago. So if you want to find it from our website, you know, you just have to count 6 months back. So let's see here, 1, 2, April. So let's see, was it done in April? Maybe it was done back in March. Anyways, now so maybe that Divergence video came from March, but you know, using YouTube, which gives you the power of Google's search tools, very efficient there. And I've been trying to go through it also as well, and like a lot of the old workshop videos, there was no description on them, and so every once in a while when I get some extra time, I try and go through and put some kind of a description and a better title in our old YouTube videos, so that way it makes them, that way you can find them when you're doing your searches for them. Okay, good. So I've got through all the comments and stuff, so let's get started with today's theme, which is we're going to start off where from last week's workshop, where last week I covered the support resistance solver here, and I covered HeadWind mode. And so today I want to cover TailWind mode. But first, as you can see, I put some lines and some text on my chart to help illustrate better, to help you visually see what's going on better. So I'm just going to recap HeadWind mode real quick before I get into TailWind mode. So since we already covered HeadWind mode, TailWind mode ought to go pretty quickly. So let me turn on the support resistance solver here. So let me explain what I have on the chart here. All right, so the thicker lines are the pivot lines. And then I define this minimum distance area, which is 10 ticks. And so let me minimize this, get that out of the way. Get that out of the way. Open this down. All right, so we see here in our support resistance solver, we have a minimum in our distance targets, all right, for HeadWind mode. So these change when you switch from HeadWind mode to TailWind mode. So in HeadWind mode, we have this minimum distance and ideal distance. All right, so you can see I have minimum set to 10 ticks, ideal set to 20 ticks. And so I drew a line, drew these lines here representing that the minimum distance offset from the pivot line and the ideal distance offset from the pivot line. And so as we, let's just kind of focus on this wide green area here. So as price is, in this case, the closing price, right, it's below our pivot line. And also keep in mind, I set the solver to evaluate the long side only. So I wanted to get rid of the short side to kind of keep us, to help it, I guess, to help explain this a little better. I think it gets a little confusing when both the long and the shorts are happening at the same time. So I'll go over the long side first. So that's why there's no short outputs. So we can see that when price is below our pivot line here, that what HeadWind mode is telling us is that we're good to go long until you can see right here. You see right here this dot right here, and let me just put a little dot there. So closing price, breaks inside of this ideal distance area, right? It breaks inside of this ideal distance zone. And if you look at BloodHound's output, the output begins to drop. It begins to diminish as the price broke inside that area. and then price drops back out of that area, and we're still good to go long. And then over here, price moves back up, right? And the closing price is a little further or a little closer to our R1 pivot line. It's a little closer, and you can see that the output, the long output, dropped down even further. So you can see that the closer that the price gets to the pivot line, the more that the long output reduces or diminishes. And then as soon as price gets inside this minimum distance, then there is no output value at all. So this minimum distance defines when the solver will have no output value. So we can see here on this bar, there's no long output, and 2 bars over, right, the closing price is inside of this minimum distance area, and therefore there's no output. Now the bar in between, we can see that the closing price broke above the pivot line. It broke above it, and so now what the solver is saying is, well, you're above your pivot line, so now it's looking at the next pivot line up, and it's saying so let me squish my chart down. So from where closing price is, it's looking up to the next resistance line, and it's saying there's plenty of room to take a long trade now. And so that's why there is a long output here, because the closing price broke above the R1. So the solver is no longer looking at R1 for longs, it's looking at R2, which is way up above it. And it's saying you're clear to go, take a long trade into R2, which is way, up above here. And let me shrink this up a little bit. And so it's kind of the same thing. So if we look at the white pivot line, right here, this closing price, we can see this closing price is inside of our ideal distance area, and so there is a long output, but it's diminishing, and it's not, the value is not great enough to actually give us a long signal anymore. And then of course, as the closing price gets inside of this minimum distance area, then there's no output anymore. All right, so let's I'll just recap that real quickly on the short sides. And well, actually first, let me just mention this again, right? So when we're below the white pivot line, right, the support resistance solver is comparing or analyzing how close the closing price is to this pivot line. And then as soon as the closing price breaks above the white pivot line, now the solver is comparing the closing price to the next pivot line above it, which would be the blue R1 line. And so that's why we have a long signal now. So there's plenty of room from closing price here all the way up to the R1 pivot line. There's plenty of room to take a long trade in. And same as price comes down, same thing. And then price right here, obviously price is just below the white pivot line, just below it. And so the solver is saying that, well, obviously the white pivot line is way too close to take a long trade. And so therefore there's no long output until price breaks above the white pivot line again, and then we're good to go long into the R1 resistance line. All right, so with that, now let's take a look at how the solver evaluates the short side. All right, let's shrink up the chart here. So just keep in mind, so S1 is way down here, way down here. So there's a long distance from, the closing price here. It's a huge distance from the closing price all the way down. So what the solver is saying is that there's plenty of room to take a short trade into R1, which is way down here. And the distances that the solver uses to determine if you have enough room to go short into that R1, is based off of this ideal distance and minimum distance. So as price moves up, right, the solver is comparing the closing price to R1, which is way down there where I showed you. And then as soon as price breaks above our white pivot line, so now the solver is comparing the closing price to the white pivot line, and clearly there's only about probably about 7 ticks, and so we're in this minimum distance area here. And so since we're inside of this minimum distance zone, there's no short output. We're not there's not enough distance to go short, so there's no short output until, of course, price breaks below the white pivot line, and now there's plenty of room to take a short into R1. And then, of course, as price moves up, once again, as soon as price gets far enough away from the white pivot line, then the solver says, there's enough room to now take a short trade into the white pivot line. So we can see that on this bar here, the closing price is still just barely inside of our ideal distance area, right? It's defined by the dashed gray line. So we're inside that ideal distance, and we can see that the short, let me scale this over. So our short output is here at 0.875. So we're not at 100% confidence that we can take a short, but it's enough. And then as price moves even higher, right now there's even now we're outside of this ideal distance zone, and now there's plenty of room to take a short trade into the white pivot line. And of course, you define this ideal distance, this offset zone here, right? These zone areas, you define those distances by the minimum distance and ideal distance. All right, so that's just the recap on HeadWind mode. And so next, I'll switch this over to the TailWind mode, like so. And I'm going to change my distances here to work with the lines that I already have on my chart. But first, I see that it looks like there's a question or a comment from Tony. So let me read this first before I get started with TailWind mode. Okay, so Tony, I'll get back to your question after I'm done here. So that way I try and like to keep things kind of streamlined and instead of getting off topic too much. All right. So back to TailWind mode. So I'm going to put my ideal distance, set it to ticks again, and set my maximum distance to ticks, and set the ideal distance to 10 ticks, and set my maximum distance to 20 ticks. Okay, So you'll notice that these swapped around, and one of the distance targets changed its name from minimum to maximum distance. Now, so when you're in TailWind mode, in its simplest explanation, TailWind mode is the opposite of HeadWind mode. So let me kind of swap my labels around to match where they belong. And I'll just change the names real quick. So you probably are kind of figuring out that TailWind mode is there to help you determine when you're really close to a support resistance line. So you could kind of use this to build a like a bounce signal. So you could use TailWind mode to kind of figure out when you're close enough to a support resistance line for a bounce trade off of that support resistance line. So so once again, where I have the shorts only, and so if we look at this from the short side, let's take a look at this bar here, this closing price. And we can see we're inside of this maximum distance zone here. And we can see that there's a short output here from the solver. It's not, the short output is not significant enough to give us a short signal, but the output is beginning to get greater. It will get greater as the closing price gets closer to the ideal distance. And so now the next bar over, the closing price is inside of this ideal distance zone, and so therefore that's saying we're absolutely 100% close enough to the pivot line for a short trade, a short trade bounce off of that pivot line. And then as the closing price breaks above it, essentially, the white pivot line is now too close, and we don't want to go short anymore. We're just too close. Yeah, so let's take a look at these two bars here. So you may have already kind of figured out that depending on where the closing price is within this maximum distance zone, right, we can see that when the closing price is, the closer it is to the outer zone area, the less the less the output is, and the closer the closing price gets to our ideal zone, the greater the short output gets. All right, so we can see that this closing price here is a little closer to our ideal distance, and therefore the short output is a little greater than this bar over here. So this maximum distance is creating that fuzzy logic portion of BloodHound, where all right, so that's how you can use that maximum distance if you do use the fuzzy logic part of BloodHound. If you do want to just use this support resistance solver in its in a simple, easy to understand use of it, what you can do is you can just set your ideal distance and your maximum distance is the same, and it just creates this easy to understand digital type output. So now there's no fuzzy logic involved. So as we look at the two bars now with the green dots, right, there's no output. So there's only a short output as soon as price gets within this ideal zone only, because now the maximum and the ideal distance are now within the same zone, are now in the same zone. So if you're working with the support resistance solver, if you're trying to work out, what distances you want to use, I would suggest starting off starting off using it in its simple form and just keep these distances the same. And then if you want to make your system a little more flexible, then you can begin to work with the maximum distance and increase that maximum distance a little bit at a time with your system. Try and fine-tune the the variability of the short output and of course the long output. So let's take a look at the long side now. All right, so as we look at the long side here, so now the longs, the way the longs are looking is, we're looking for price to be just above our support resistance line, and so as soon as we're within this upper ideal distance zone, we're going to get a long output. And we can see here, right here, the closing price is right on the edge of our maximum distance area. So we're almost out of this maximum distance zone, and we can see that the output is almost nothing. It's almost zero. So the further the closing price gets away, from the pivot line, and the closer it gets to the edge of this maximum distance, the more that the long output is going to diminish, is going to reduce. Let's see if there's some better examples over here. Yeah, so let's kind of take a look at this example over here. So right here on this bar, right, the closing price, which is the white dot, is within our ideal distance zone. And the output here, let's scroll this over, the output here is at 1 or 100%. And as we move one bar forward, so now we can see the closing price is now inside of our maximum distance zone, and we can see the output here dropped a little bit. It's now at 0.85. So now the closing price is within this maximum distance zone, which is the fuzzy logic part. And so as price moves further away from R1, the long output is going to diminish. So let's see if I can find a location where price is actually kind of moving down for a bounce off of these pivot lines. And let's see. Well, no, it looks like price was pretty range bound on this day I picked as an example. Oh, well, yeah, here, let me use this as an example. Let me slide my text over. So kind of what, just to reiterate again, kind of what the TailWind mode is for is when price comes down and approaches your support line, TailWind mode is there to determine when price is close enough to your support line that you should start looking for a bounce trade off of that. Right, so if price is coming down to R1, you're looking for a long trade bounce off of it. So we can see, let me expand this out a little more. So we can see here on the green dot, right, there's no long output here because we're outside of our maximum distance zone. Oops, hold on a sec, there we go. So the closing price is just above our maximum distance, so there's no long output. And then as we step one bar forward, now the closing price gets a little closer, and you can see the long output is now at 0.75. So we're almost close enough to get a long, a long signal output from this solver. And then the closing price is now inside of our ideal distance area, and so now we're at a 100% confidence, or a 1, that we're in this ideal zone to take a long trade bounce off of R1. And we're still there. Closing price is just above it, and then unfortunately price broke through it, and so now there's no long output anymore because there's just no pivot support line down below price. All right, so that kind of wraps up TailWind mode there, and I see some questions have come in. All right, so Jeff is saying he's kind of getting lost on the support resistance solver. Can you explain a bit about the design? Okay, yeah, so all right, so Jeff, let me put the support resistance solver back in HeadWind mode. And also, let me open up. I'm going to open up. So I'm with the support resistance solver. Jeff, I'm not sure if you were here last Friday workshop, but last Friday workshop, I kind of went through, and explained some of the more commonly used options here, real quickly. So all right. So yeah, so Jeff wasn't here for last Friday. So I'll try and give this a quick summary again of what the support resistance solver is for. So I have the use indicator turned on because, oops, let me turn it back on, because I'm wanting to use the Woodie Pivots, as a part of the trade signals that you're trying to build with BloodHound. And so kind of the reason why the support resistance solver came about was that there are a few indicators, like the pivots indicators, that have these multiple plot lines, right? So it has all kind of plot lines here. And this is the one solver where you can actually analyze all of the plot lines at once with one solver. Whereas with the comparison solver, right, you can only select one plot for the longs and one plot for the shorts, right? So you could do the same thing with the comparison solver that you're doing with the support resistance solver, but if you use a comparison solver, you have to create a solver for every single plot line that you're looking at. So with the support resistance solver, you can analyze all of these plot lines in one solver. So it makes it's a convenience as to what the support resistance solver is trying to do. So we're analyzing all of the pivot lines here at once with one solver. And then it has two primary modes, HeadWind mode and TailWind mode. So in HeadWind mode is used, that mode is used to, in effect, so like right now, I'm looking at the longs only because it's just easier for us to visually understand. If I have the shorts turned on, it gets a little complicated. So I'm looking at the long side only. And so in HeadWind mode, what we're trying to determine is when price gets too close to our resistance line to take a long trade anymore. Right? So I've defined these distances as 10 and 20. So to keep it simple, I can just put 10 and 10 to keep it real simple. And so what the solver is going to tell us is that when the closing price is within 10 ticks of our resistance line, the solver is going to say you're not clear to take a long trade anymore. See, so there's no long output anymore. So it's saying you're too close to this resistance line to take a long trade into this resistance line. All right. Now, clear. I hope you guys don't get too caught up in the details. You know, obviously 10 ticks is way too close. You know, this is just an example. You know, realistically, you probably would want to set this to, I don't know, for oil. I don't know. It depends if you're trying to build a scalping system or not. But you know, I would kind of guess that realistically, you would probably want to set this to 30 ticks probably as a more reasonable. But I'm just using 10 ticks because it's easier to demonstrate. You know, so with this 10 ticks, you can see that when price is below our pivot line, we don't want to take a long trade into this pivot line until price breaks above it, right? And then we're clear to go long again because we broke this resistance line. And then the solver is going to look at the next resistance line up, and it's going to say, oh, we got plenty of distance from price to the next resistance line up here, the blue one, until, once again, price right over here gets within our specified distance, and now the solver says, oh, you're too close to this next resistance line up above, and therefore you shouldn't take any long trades anymore. So the support resistance kind of builds a filtering system, you know, for your overall system, so that you're not taking long trades into resistance, you know, or if we look at the short side, you know, it's going to be determining that we're not taking short trades into support. Now, you know, in this example, price is kind of going the wrong direction. Let's take a look over here. Yeah, so you can see here as price is coming down, as soon as the closing price, right here in this bar, as soon as it gets within our ideal distance area, right, it's saying that you're too close to your support line, so you can't take any more short trades anymore. So that's what HeadWind mode is there to determine. You know, when you're too close to your support or resistance line to take a trade into it. And TailWind mode is there to determine when you are very close to your support resistance line to take a bounce trade off of that line. So if you're looking to take a long trade off of this R1, that's what TailWind mode would be for. But a better example would be, yeah, here we go. So even though this didn't work out, but as price is coming up, if you're looking to take a short bounce trade off of R1, that's what TailWind mode is trying to tell you, that, hey, you're really close to R1. If all your other indicators and logic lines up for taking a short bounce trade off R1, this support resistance solver is saying you're close enough. So start looking for a short trade off of R1 here. So, all right. Okay, good. So I guess that answered. Oops, let me get rid of that. Fortunately, ever since I upgraded my computer to my new i7 processor, I've been having trouble with my thinkorswim platform. For some reason it gives me a performance issue with thinkorswim, even though the processor I have now is probably 5 times faster than my old AMD processor. So Jeff, you're getting the same thing. Good. Well, hopefully those guys at thinkorswim will get this fixed. So it's probably just I think it's a Java. I think it's actually a Java issue with the new i7 processor out there. So I don't think it's really thinkorswim's problem, but hopefully they can, I don't know, disable that feature or something until Java gets it fixed, if it is Java's problem. All right, so let me so I feel I've kind of wrapped up the support resistance solver, in TailWind mode. Actually, you know what? Let me just real quick show both at the same time. So in TailWind mode, now that I'm evaluating both the long and the shorts with this solver, and I'm still in TailWind mode, we can see here that let me stretch this out, right? When price is just below our pivot line, we're good to go short, and then as soon as price breaks above it, then it says, okay, we're good to go long now. Even though, really since we broke above it, it's not really a bounce trade anymore, but really the support resistance solver isn't there to, analyze what exactly the context of price, but it's just there to tell you that, hey, you're really close to this pivot line, and it'll tell you if you're below it or just above it. And you'd have to use other solvers to determine, if price was coming down towards the pivot line, for a long bounce when we get this long output signal when price is above it. And so let me put this in HeadWind mode. So we can see when price is in this kind of no man's land, we're far enough away from the white pivot line and far enough away from S1 that we can both take long and short trades. We can trade in any direction we want because there's enough room between both pivot lines to take a trade in either direction. And then you can see as soon as the closing price gets really close to our white pivot line, it's saying, if we look at BloodHound's output here, it's saying we can't go long anymore, so there's no long output, but there's still a short output. So you can take a short trade still because your next support line is way down here, so you're still okay to go short until price breaks above this pivot line. And so now the solver says, well, if I look at solver's is now looking up, saying, you know what, there's enough distance from the closing price up to R1 that you can take a long trade. There's plenty of room to take a long trade. However, there's no room to take a short trade into the white pivot line. And so you can see down here on BloodHound, there's no short output. All right, so that no short output is saying there's no room to take a short. All right, so that's kind of how it looks with both being evaluated at the same time. So, all right, so I'm going to jump in here and answer Tony's question, and then I'm going to try and wrap this up here. So it's 11:20, and I want to wrap this up by 11:30 if I can. So Tony's asking, on each chart I have 5 BloodHound running. I notice each one is an instance, and I can let's see, and I can for tune. I'm not sure what that word is there, Tony. So saying I can torture. Okay. So I wasn't sure if you're trying to say torture. I thought that kind of word would be a kind of odd word to use, but okay. So Tony's saying I notice each is an instance, and I can torture the system quite heavily. Besides some sort of compiling, is there a way for me to be more efficient? Thanks. So Tony, are you experiencing like speed issues? Is that what's happening? Is NinjaTrader really slowing down on you when you have 5 instances? Loading time. So the loading time of NinjaTrader in general, or just the loading time of loading up a new chart? So, okay, well, yeah, so Tony, there's a lot of things that can affect your loading time. NinjaTrader has tried to implement, with version 7, implement a lot of ways of saving time by, when you load up an indicator on your chart, if you're using that indicator, if you have several instances of indicator, as long as the periods, like this is, take a moving average, for example. If I have a moving average on my chart with a 5 period, if I have another exact same chart, the chart has to be the same, and I have another 5 period moving average on another chart, then NinjaTrader caches that data, so it doesn't have to calculate it twice. But NinjaTrader, tried to make Ninja as efficient as possible, but still, every time you load up an instance of BloodHound, or basically any new chart, right, NinjaTrader has to calculate all that data. So the more indicators you have on your chart, right, the more calculations NinjaTrader has to do. So just, inherently, it's just going to take more time for NinjaTrader to calculate all that data. And, BloodHound is kind of a game changer, for NinjaTrader, in that, the more indicators that you use in your BloodHound system, obviously that's the more, more calculations that NinjaTrader has to do, right? So, BloodHound is just kind of like the container. It takes all of your indicators and what you're wanting to do and everything, but But ultimately, NinjaTrader has to calculate all that data and then feed it back to BloodHound, and then it gets plotted on your, and then it gets plotted on your chart as these long and short bars. So really, Tony, so kind of the core question, I think what Tony's asking is, how can he make his BloodHound system as efficient as possible? So one thing you could do is, well, that's kind of a technical question for Jeremy. So I would say, you could get rid of solvers that you're no longer using. Although I'm pretty certain that if, most of you are going to be working on the logic board. I'm not working on the logic board just because I'm just covering one solver today. But let's just say, let me open up a logic board here, and I'll drop this support resistance solver here on here, and I also have this bar direction thing. So I'm pretty sure that any solver that is not connected into the system is not being calculated. So having extra solvers lying around, I'm pretty sure that that doesn't affect the speed of BloodHound. If it's not connected somewhere, then it's not being used. So basically, BloodHound is not calculating this solver anymore because it's not connected. I'm pretty sure that's how Jeremy built it. I'm not positive. But with that being said, I guess you could, I would say, you could do a little test. Make a copy, of your system, delete all the solvers that you're not using, see if that helps things a little bit. I don't think it will. You could send in a ticket there, Tony, and I can ask Jeremy and get you an answer back on that. Probably the best thing that you could do, and it's for your computer as a whole, the best thing that you could do is buy an SSD, a solid state drive for your computer. Let's see. This is kind of my favorite place to go to shop, just because Newegg is pretty hard to beat. They don't always have the best deals, but on average, they're pretty hard to beat. And so if you buy yourself a solid state drive, on average, this will speed your whole computer up about 5 times to 10 times faster, depending on what you're doing. So I just recently put some SSDs in my computer, and I noticed that my VMwares load up so much faster, and I actually replaced my C drive on my computer. And NinjaTrader used to take probably about somewhere 2 to 3 minutes for NinjaTrader to load on my computer. Now it almost loads in like 30 seconds. And I have a ton of charts loading on my main computer because I'm capturing data. I'm recording data as it comes in. So for the money, instead of replacing your CPU, I would suggest, for those of you who have slow computers out there, first replace your hard drive with one of these solid state drives here. That is the biggest bang for your buck in speeding up your computer as a whole. Because right now the hard drive is kind of the bottleneck of loading times. So, and of course, if you're not computer savvy, you'll definitely need to have a buddy help you to copy your data from your old hard drive onto this new solid state drive. So, and also I would recommend, the solid state drives are not a perfect technology yet. I would suggest running them in a RAID system, because they're not as reliable as the old hard drives. They do have a higher failure rate, so you definitely want to either use your old hard drive as a backup and back up your system daily, or run buy 2 SSDs and run them in a RAID, so that way your computer's protected. All right, so let me get through these comments. All right, so I think I took care of Jeff's comments here. All right, so Hans has a question. What is the difference between this solver and the comparison solver? All right, so Hans, I think I kind of explained the difference between the support resistance solver and, say, the comparison solver. So if I drop a comparison solver on here, right, if I go in and load up the Woodie Pivots here, I know I'm going awful fast, sorry about that, but if I load up the Woodie Pivots, right, I can't select multiple plots. I can only select one of these plot lines at a time for the long and the short. I can't select multiple ones, right? So whereas the support resistance solver, just to reiterate, it allows me to select all the plot lines, so I can analyze all the plot lines in one solver. So, and it kind of has these convenient, modes set up, which with the comparison solver you would have to change how your outputs are set up, depending if you're trying to look for HeadWind mode or TailWind mode. So that's kind of another thing that the support resistance solver does, is it modifies your outputs here. So all right, let me get through some of these others. And so Jeff is asking, can he use his own session pivots? Absolutely. You can. BloodHound is really designed to work with any indicator that has a plot output. So another type of pivot indicator is this Murray math, right? So I could switch over to the Murray math, and I could analyze all those Murray math lines as well. So I didn't use the Murray math in my example just because these plot lines are really close together, so it makes it more complicated to visually understand on the chart. That's why I didn't use the Murray math. I went with the pivots because they're spread apart a little more. So any indicator that has multiple plots, that's what the support resistance solver is for. All right, just trying to get through some of these comments here. Oh, all right. So anybody else that has Thinkorswim and is encountering the same kind of performance errors that keeps popping up, Jeff is suggesting go into the main menu and allocate more memory. So I'll have to look into that. It's been quite a while since I really got deeply involved with Thinkorswim. I just use it to listen to CNBC, news. I just use Thinkorswim now to watch TV. I really haven't traded with it in quite a while, but I'll take a look at that. Thanks, Jeff. Tony is saying, do you need to turn on multi-thread? Some software needs that to be explicitly turned on. I don't know, Tony. I'll take a look. I don't think Thinkorswim has a multi-threaded option or not, but I'll take a look at that as well. Yeah, there's a good chance that Thinkorswim has some suggestions. I just haven't bothered emailing them yet with this latest issue I'm having, or I should say we are having. So it's good to know it's not just me, but it sounds like it's other i7 or 4th generation i processors, I'm assuming, has the problem with Thinkorswim. All right. Yeah, so Jeff is just reiterating you can configure Thinkorswim to use more memory. So I'll go and do that. All right, still going through a bunch of these comments here. Oh yeah, Jeff, that's right. Jeff has a good suggestion for Tony. Yeah, so you know, this is a NinjaTrader feature. So if you go into your indicators list, and for BloodHound, you know, if calculate on bar close, if you have this set to false, that's really gonna, you really need a fast processor to run BloodHound with this set on false, because, right, instead of your indicators making one calculation after the bar closes, now NinjaTrader is recalculating your indicator on every single incoming tick. Right, so that adds a ton more calculations. But of course, this setting won't actually affect the load time. So if this is set to false, it only affects live incoming data. It doesn't really affect your load time. You know, because calculating on bar close, if it's set to false, it has no effect on historical bars, because those bars are already closed, they're not building. So so it's only on a live building bar. If you set this to false, does it have does it use more CPU processing power? So so I don't think this is really related to Tony's question. I think Tony's question is more about the how can you speed up the load time, and really that solid state drive is really the only real way that you can speed up NinjaTrader's load time. Or of course you could minimize the number of days on your chart. Right, the more days that are on your chart, the more bars NinjaTrader has to build, and it has to calculate your indicators for every single bar on your chart. So you could minimize the number of days in your data series here. Right? I do these workshops with just a minimum number of days, so things run really quick and efficient. All right, so Tony's asking, so he's dropped a subscription to another third-party indicator. So, you know, so his third-party indicator is no longer calculating, and of course that's going to raise some issues using that indicator that doesn't function anymore within BloodHound, and of course BloodHound's complaining. So Tony's asking, is there a way for me to examine the XML file so that I can clean those templates out? Yes. So Tony, yeah, you know, you could look at those XML files. XML is just text. It's kind of complicated to understand. You know, honestly, we don't support that. You know, we don't have any documentation that tells you how our XML files are built, and that's just kind of something that, you know, it's just too complicated to support, but the XML files are just plain text. So you could open up that XML file in a text editor. You know, you could open up the XML file in, let's see, in Notepad. So if I go to my templates folder, go into BloodHound, and let's see, I could open this up with Notepad. So, and you can see it's just plain text, and you can do a search for your indicator, and you can try and figure out which logic template it's in. I think that's where Tony's trying to go. Tony's trying to figure out which logic template is calling. Probably you want to find out which solver your third-party indicator is used in, and I think you should be able to find that. But yeah, but you know, we don't support you know, how this is all built. So it is possible there, Tony. Oh, so Tony already has an SSD. Wow. Well, Tony, you must have a really, either your indicators really require a lot of calculations, or you have a lot of data on your chart. So Tony, it looks like you kind of, if you already have a solid state drive on your computer, it looks like you've done everything you can do, and hopefully NinjaTrader is installed on your SSD drive. And you know, another thing is when you first load up NinjaTrader, right, is that whenever you connect to your data feed, you'll notice that NinjaTrader reloads down it downloads all the data again on all your charts. So that's something that's not possible to speed up, since NinjaTrader downloads the data, and it rebuilds the bars every time you load NinjaTrader. You know, so that download time and building time, there really is no way to speed that up. So Charles is asking, I just noticed this link from the CNET Cheapskate today. I haven't heard of them. Includes a deal on a Toshiba SSD. Links also to info on upgrading to an SSD, etc. Can share with the BloodHound crew. All right. Gosh, thanks for that, Charles. I don't have a way to copy that into my VMware for people to see, but so hopefully, guys, if you do a Google search, if you're looking for an SSD, you can do a Google search for CNET Cheapskate, and then Toshiba SSD, and maybe you'll come across that sale that Charles is talking about. So I believe there's also an article on Big Mike's. I think someone wrote an article on Big Mike's explaining how to put NinjaTrader on a solid state drive to speed things up for you as well. And I'm sure there's plenty of other articles that you could find with a Google search on how to replace your existing old drive with a solid state drive. So, thanks for that, Charles. So Al is asking, is there a workaround for indicators that do not show any plots? No, Al, unfortunately there isn't. If there was, we would definitely try and get it implemented into BloodHound. So yeah, there's a lot. Well, I should say there's a lot, but I should say there are definitely third-party indicators that they use their own custom plot routines, or really they're not plotting stuff. That what they're doing is there's a lot of indicators out there that kind of use this rectangle object to illustrate, support resistance areas, or they draw lines on the chart like I have here. And so right now we don't have a way to analyze, the price point at which these chart objects sit on. So that is on our to-do list, but that's going to take Jeremy quite a lot of research and effort to get that figured out. So he's kind of taken a quick look at it before a while back and kind of determined it was going to be pretty complicated. So he's kind of put it on the shelf for now. But yeah, one of these days we hope to be able to, analyze things like a dot, or if your indicator puts an arrow, we want to be able to find out what bar it's on and what price level it was placed at and things like that. So you could use these objects within BloodHound to kind of signal stuff. But that's a ways out. Good. Sounds like a lot of you guys have beefed up your computers, make them as fast as possible. Definitely helps. And of course, Jeff is suggesting to use NinjaTrader 64-bit. It's a little more faster. I haven't really found it to be that much faster, but it is a little bit more. All right. It doesn't look like I have any more kind of BloodHound related questions here. This looks like just a bunch of comments. Kind of about talking about SSDs and whatnot. So with that, I have definitely gone over my 11:30 time I was shooting to quit this off, or to end this for today. So let's see. All right. Okay, Charles, let me just read your comment here real quick before I sign off. Well, Charles is saying, Zach, you mentioned yesterday about a BloodHound user on Big Mike's forum who integrated with a third-party product to help automate trades. I searched Big Mike's forum and could only find a couple of generic BloodHound shark indicator threads. Yeah, Charles, for some reason that thread does not show up in the search box on Big Mike's. I don't know why. I kind of suspect that Big Mike deliberately took that section of his forum and eliminated it from the search capabilities, because that was posted in a section of the forum that talks about either it was in the elite section or it talks about third-party vendor products, I think. Yeah, so it's really difficult to find. So so Charles, if you want me to send that to you, I think I still have that link. Yeah, for some reason searching for BloodHound or shark indicators won't find it. I think if you do a search term for something like automated trading without writing code, or automating trading without coding, something to that effect. I think those search terms will find it. But yeah, so Charles, send me, send an email then to support@sharkindicators.com, and I think I still have that link, and I'll give it to you. All right. Well, thank you guys. Sorry I didn't get to all of your comments, but I do want to wrap this up. So you guys have a great weekend, and well, I hope to see you next Friday. All right. Bye-bye, guys.